The night before Thanksgiving, I found a folder on my daughter's desk that she had left face up beside her laptop, and in the 20 minutes it took me to read through every page. The last trace of doubt I had been carrying for 3 years finally settled into something I recognized as certainty. She had forged my name, twice, on documents I had never agreed to sign, and tucked behind those pages was a printed brochure from a place called Whispering Pines Residential Care, with a sticky note in my daughter's handwriting that said, "Springtime line. Ask Dr. Harmon about the assessment." I am 67 years old. I still walk 2 miles every morning. I still do my own taxes, balance my own checkbook, and remember every birthday in this family without a single reminder app. I was a registered nurse for 31 years. I have held hands while people died, and I have kept my voice steady through worse things than this. I took photographs of every page with my phone. Then I set the folder back exactly as I found it, walked upstairs to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed with my hands folded in my lap for a long time. My husband Edwin used to say that the most dangerous thing in the world is a woman who has finally made up her mind. By the time Thanksgiving dinner was on the table the next afternoon, the stuffing I had made from scratch, the rolls I had shaped by hand at 6 in the morning while the house slept. My daughter had no idea that I had already moved every dollar left in my savings to a new account at a bank 2 towns over. She had no idea I had called my attorney that morning, or that the photographs were already in an encrypted folder on my phone, or that a single suitcase, my good one, navy blue, the one Edwin gave me for our 30th anniversary, was packed and sitting in the back of my closet behind the winter coats. She poured the wine. She smiled for the photos. She told my son-in-law to say grace. And I sat at the head of the table I had been forbidden from rearranging, in the house I had helped finance, and I said amen. That was the last Thanksgiving I spent in that house. It hadn't started out as a trap, or maybe it had, and I simply hadn't wanted to see it. Edwin died in April 4 years ago, 23 days after a diagnosis that came too late to do much about. We had been married 40 years. 40 years of a life built the same way you build anything good, slowly, carefully, with a lot of arguments about things that didn't matter and a few about things that did. We had our house in Clarksville, Tennessee, the one with the screened porch Edwin had built himself over 3 summers. We had a garden. We had enough. When Edwin died, I kept the house for a year. My daughter called every other day. She worried about me being alone. She worried about the roof, which needed replacing. She worried about the driveway, which flooded every spring. She was pregnant with her 2nd child and said she wanted her children to know their grandmother, not just a voice on a phone. "Come live with us, Mom," she said. "We have the space. We have the basement suite. The kids would love it. You could finally stop paying that mortgage." She made it sound like shelter, like family, like the natural order of things. I sold the house in September. It felt like swallowing glass, handing over those keys. Edwin's screened porch, the rose beds I had tended for 15 years, the kitchen where my daughter had learned to make her grandmother's biscuits. I wired $87,000 to my daughter's account for the renovation costs on the new suite, with the understanding that we would work out a formal arrangement when the time came. The time never quite came. I moved into the finished basement in October. It was nice, I'll grant them that. New flooring, a small kitchenette, a bathroom with a soaking tub. My daughter had picked all the finishes herself. Tasteful, neutral, nothing that looked like me. When I asked if I could put Edwin's bookshelf in the corner, she said the wood tones didn't work. When I asked about a key for the exterior door, she said it wasn't necessary, that we were family. That sentence, "we're family," did a lot of heavy lifting in that house. The first 2 years were manageable. My granddaughter was born 3 months after I moved in, and my grandson was 4. And they needed so much of everyone's time and energy that the friction stayed small. I helped with school pickups. I cooked dinner 2 or 3 nights a week. I watched the children on weekends so my daughter and her husband could go out. I didn't mind, truthfully. That part was real. Watching my grandson learn to read, watching my granddaughter take her first wobbly steps across the kitchen tile. That was the reason I had stayed, through the first signs that something was wrong. The signs had been easy to ignore at first. My daughter had been added to my checking account the first winter, to help me manage bills while I settled in, she said. I was still learning the new rhythms of the house. It seemed reasonable. I didn't look at the statements the way I should have. But by the second year, I had started to notice things. Small withdrawals I didn't remember making, a charge for a restaurant I had never visited, money that had once been there and then wasn't, and when I asked, my daughter would look up from her phone with that particular expression she had perfected, patient, faintly exhausted, as though I were a difficult child, and say something like, "I covered a bill for you, Mom. I'll explain later." Later never came. I should have pushed harder. I know that now. But I was 65 and tired, and I still believed, against all evidence, that she would not actually steal from me. She was my daughter. I had nursed her through 3 ear infections the same winter, stayed up with her through chicken pox, worked double shifts for years, so she could have the things I hadn't. I could not make myself believe the thing that was beginning to seem very obvious. Edwin had believed it. He had told me, more than once, that our daughter had a way of reframing things to her advantage that he didn't entirely trust. I had thought he was being uncharitable. He was being accurate. The folder on her desk changed everything. I had gone up to the main floor for a glass of water around 10:30 the night before Thanksgiving. My daughter and her husband were in the living room watching something, their voices low. I saw the light on in her home office, the door half open, and I went in to check whether the window had been left up. It had been raining earlier. The folder was right there, open, as though she had been reviewing it before dinner and left it behind when she went to watch TV. 2 documents. The first was a durable power of attorney with my name on it, my signature at the bottom, the date 3 months prior. I had never signed it. I had never seen it. The signature was close, but it wasn't mine. I have a nurse's handwriting, compact and precise. This was looser, practiced, but not quite right. The second document was a change of beneficiary form for one of my retirement accounts, redirecting the entire balance to my daughter in the event of my death. Again, my name at the bottom. Again, not my hand. And then the brochure, Whispering Pines Residential Care, compassionate living for every stage. With her handwriting on the sticky note, spring timeline, ask Dr. Harmon about the assessment. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was preparing to have me declared incompetent, place me in a facility, and assume control of everything I had left. She had been patient about it, methodical. She had watched me for 2 years and decided the safest path was to make me disappear while I was still alive to be managed. I stood there for what felt like a very long time. Then I took the photographs, set the folder back exactly as I had found it, and went downstairs. I lay on top of the covers until it was light enough to call my attorney. Edwin had given me Ms. Aldrich's card 11 years ago. She had handled his estate, and when the paperwork was finished, he had pulled me aside and said, "Keep this number somewhere safe. Somewhere she won't find it if you ever need to use it behind someone's back." He had said it without blaming anyone, just quietly, the way he said everything important. I had kept the card inside the back cover of the King James Bible on my bedside table for 11 years. My daughter had probably never noticed it. I called at 7:30, before anyone else was up. Miss Aldrich called back within the hour. I took the call in the bathroom with the fan running and the door locked. That small button lock, the only lock in my room. I told her everything, the documents, the signatures, the brochure, the withdrawals I had never authorized. "This is forgery," she said, in the same calm tone she had used when explaining Edwin's estate, and potentially elder financial abuse. Both are serious. Do you want to move forward? Yes, I said, but I want to do it right, every piece of paper in order before she knows anything. We spent 45 minutes on the phone. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. That afternoon, while my daughter took the children to her mother-in-law's for the pre-holiday gathering, I drove to the bank. I wore my good coat. I brought every document Ms. Aldrich had told me to bring. The bank manager, a serious young woman who took 11 minutes to review everything I had laid on her desk, looked up at me over her glasses and said, "Mrs." And I said, "Just tell me what happens next." What happened next was that the fraudulent power of attorney was flagged, a hold was placed on any pending account changes, and a security note was added to my file. I walked out with a new account number and a very small feeling of steadiness that I had almost forgotten. I went back to the house and made the stuffing for Thanksgiving. The next afternoon, I sat through dinner, the way you sit through something you have already survived in your mind. My daughter was warm, solicitous, pouring wine and complimenting the rolls. My son-in-law carved the turkey and made a toast about gratitude. My granddaughter, who had just turned 3, kept climbing into my lap and then climbing out again. My grandson, 6 years old, serious and careful, with his grandfather's way of watching things before he spoke, asked me if I had ever seen really big mountains. "Your grandfather and I went to Colorado once," I told him, "before you were born." "Was it scary?" "A little," I said, "but beautiful things usually are." After the children were in bed and my son-in-law had settled into the living room, I helped my daughter clear the table. Then I set an envelope on the counter beside her. She looked at it, then at me. "What is this?" "A letter from my attorney. I'd encourage you to read it tonight." The color left her face slowly, like water draining. "Mom." "The forged signatures have already been reported," I said. "The accounts have been secured." The brochure for Whispering Pines was a very instructive piece of reading. She opened her mouth. I kept going. "I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this because I found documents with my name on them that I never signed, and because I am 67 years old and have every right to protect myself, including from you. Read the letter. Talk to a lawyer. This will proceed through proper channels, and I would like it to go as smoothly as possible for the sake of the children." I went downstairs. I locked my door. I set my alarm for 4 in the morning. When the car service arrived at 4:15, I carried my navy blue suitcase out through the side entrance and did not look back. I had already said goodbye in my own way, walking through each room the afternoon before, touching things, letting myself remember. The kitchen where my granddaughter had learned to say my name. The backyard where my grandson had taught himself to ride a bicycle, falling and getting up without complaint, over and over. I had left something on each of their beds, wrapped weeks earlier, tucked away in my suitcase so there would be no hurry, no drama. For my granddaughter, a small music box that had been my mother's, the kind that plays when you lift the lid. For my grandson, a leather journal with his name pressed into the cover, and a note that read, "Write down the things you notice. The world needs more people who pay attention." For my daughter, I left nothing except the name of Ms. Aldrich. Trudy had been my college roommate. 45 years ago, we had lived in a third-floor walk-up in Nashville, eaten a great deal of instant oatmeal, and argued passionately about things we would later find embarrassing. She had married an Italian engineer in her late 30s, moved to the hills outside Florence, outlived him by a decade, and turned his family's stone farmhouse into a small bed and breakfast. She answered him with the particular efficiency of a woman who had decided, at some point, to stop waiting for life to arrange itself properly. She had been telling me to visit for 6 years, every Christmas card, every birthday call, whenever you're ready. The room with the vineyard view has your name on it. I landed in Florence on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Trudy met me at arrivals in a red coat and did not say a word about the situation until we were in her car on the highway, and then all she said was, "You must be starving. I made a roast." That was when I started crying. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of crying that happens when someone does a small, ordinary kindness after you have been holding yourself together for a very long time. She handed me a packet of tissues from the glove box and kept driving. The farmhouse was everything she had described. Stone walls, low wooden beams, a kitchen that smelled of rosemary and wood smoke. The room with the vineyard view had white curtains and a lock on the door, a real lock with a heavy old key, and when Trudy pressed it into my palm, she said, "This is yours. Nobody comes in unless you say so." I slept 11 hours the first night. The calls started the next morning. My daughter, then my son-in-law, then my daughter again. I did not answer. I sent one text, all communication through Ms. Aldrich's office. "I am well and safe." Then I blocked the number and went down to Trudy's kitchen for coffee. Miss Aldrich kept me informed by email. The bank's fraud investigation was proceeding. My daughter had hired an attorney. There were letters back and forth, very formal, very careful. Her lawyer suggested I had acted impulsively and that the matter might be resolved quietly within the family. Miss Aldrich replied that we would be happy to solve it through the appropriate legal channels, and that any attempt to characterize document forgery as a family disagreement would be addressed accordingly. I read the emails and then I put on my walking shoes and went out into the Tuscan hills. I had forgotten what it felt like to walk without worrying about being needed. I had forgotten what it felt like to look at a view and think of nothing else. The hills in November were stripped of their summer green, but they had a different kind of beauty, austere and very quiet. I walked until my legs were warm and my mind had gone still, and then I found a low stone wall and sat on it and watched a hawk turn slow circles in the gray sky. Edwin would have loved it here. That thought came with pain and then with something softer. He had prepared me for this. He had understood, long before I would let myself, that I might need to leave, and he had made sure I would know how. The card in the Bible, the attorney, the quiet instruction. Put the important things somewhere they'll never think to look. I had married the right man. I had just not always listened to him the way I should have. 3 weeks in, I received a message through Ms. Aldrich from an unexpected source. My son-in-law had asked to speak with me directly, not through lawyers. I agreed to a brief call. When he rang, the first thing he said was, "I didn't know about the documents. I found out when your attorney's letter arrived. She told me you had agreed to all of it." I believed her. A pause. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what kind of household we'd been running. What we asked of you and what we gave back. Another pause. "I'm sorry, I mean it." I told him the legal process would continue regardless, because forgery was not something I could absorb as a misunderstanding. I told him I hoped they would find their footing, but I would not be the floor they found it on. He said he understood. After we hung up, I sat with my coffee until it went cold. A week before Christmas, my grandson found a way to reach me. My daughter had changed his contact settings after she realized I had blocked her number, but my grandson was 6 years old and observant in the way Edwin had been. Quiet, precise, watching everything. And he had apparently memorized the number I had written inside the front cover of his journal. He used the school library phone during free period. "Grandma," he said, "are you okay?" "I am, sweetheart. I'm in Italy. It's very pretty here. There are hills." "Like Colorado?" "Even a little better," I said. We talked for 8 minutes before the library period ended. He told me his teacher had started letting him read chapter books during independent time. He told me his sister had learned a new word that week, persistent, and was applying it to herself at every opportunity. He asked if I would come back to visit. "When things are calmer," I said, "and we can write letters in the meantime, real ones, in the journal." After we hung up, I went to find Trudy. She was in the garden, cutting back the dead growth on the rosemary bushes. working methodically, her breath visible in the cold air. "He called," I said. She looked up. "And he's going to be all right." She nodded and went back to her cutting. That was the thing about Trudy. She understood when words added something and when they didn't. The legal process took 4 months in total. My daughter cooperated, eventually. I think she understood that the alternative was a criminal charge, and that Ms. Aldrich was not the kind of attorney who issued empty threats. There was a repayment agreement for the amounts withdrawn without my authorization. A figure, once totaled, that made my chest tighten when I saw it in writing. $11,400 and some over 2 years, grocery runs, and salon appointments, and one very expensive kitchen appliance I had never been consulted about. The retirement account change was voided. The power of attorney was declared fraudulent. My name was removed from everything that had once connected our finances. Before the final paperwork was signed, I set up 2 small education trusts, one for each grandchild. The funds could only be used for tuition, books, and related expenses. My daughter and son-in-law were named trustees, which meant that someday they would have to explain to the children where the money had come from. I thought that was probably worth something. In February, my daughter sent a letter, handwritten, 3 pages. She did not excuse what she had done. She explained some of it, the financial pressure, the fear, the way she had convinced herself that managing things on my behalf was the same as helping me. She said she understood if I could not forgive her. She said she was in therapy. She said the children asked about me constantly, and that it was the hardest part of all of it, watching them miss me. I read the letter twice. I put it in the drawer beside the window, next to Edwin's photograph. I did not write back that week, or the next, but I didn't throw it away either. Spring came to the hills outside Florence the way it comes everywhere. Gradually and then all at once. The vineyards put out their first cautious leaves. The morning smelled of wet earth and something sweet that Trudy said was the wisteria on the south wall. I started walking longer each day, and then I started running again, just lightly, just enough. One morning at breakfast, Trudy asked whether I was planning to stay. I thought about my apartment in Nashville, which I had been renting since Thanksgiving. A clean, quiet place, with good light and no one to answer to. I thought about my granddaughter's music box, my grandson's journal. The letter in the drawer. "I'll stay through summer," I said, "and then I'll see." Trudy poured more coffee without comment. She had always known when to leave a sentence alone. That afternoon, I video called the children. My granddaughter showed me a drawing of a farmhouse with a vineyard, made from a postcard I had sent. The colors not quite right, but the spirit completely accurate. My grandson told me he had started a new section in his journal called Things I Noticed This Week. He had 3 entries already, a crow that came to the same branch every morning, the way rain sounds different on a metal roof than on a wood one, the fact that his grandmother's voice sounds the same on the phone as it does in person. "I'm glad," I told him. "That means you're listening right." After we hung up, I opened my own notebook, dark green cover, pages that smelled faintly of something I couldn't name, and wrote at the top of a blank page, "I did not disappear, I relocated." Then, below it, "There is a difference, and I am finally on the right side of it." I closed the notebook, set it on the windowsill, and looked out at the vineyard rows running in their long, patient lines down toward the valley. The hawk was back. Or a different hawk. It was difficult to tell from here. I was not in a hurry to find out which. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to say something directly. It is not weakness that keeps us in situations like these. It is love badly placed. And there comes a moment, not a dramatic one, not a shouting match or a slammed door, but a quiet one, the kind that happens at a desk at 10:30 at night with a folder in your hands, when you understand that protecting yourself is not a betrayal of love. It is, sometimes, the most loving thing you can do. For yourself first, and then, in ways you won't be able to predict, for everyone else too. What would you have done? Have you ever had to make a decision like this? For your own sake, even when it cost you something you loved. I'd be grateful to hear from you in the comments. And if this story found you at the right moment, there are 2 others below that viewers have told me help them feel less alone. You are not alone, and it is never too late to begin again.